Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Thursday morning. We're talking more Seahawks football, and one particular player in particular has my interest at this moment. And it is our, as of right now, nominal backup tight end, Will Dissly. I have been a little dismissive of Dissly's potential and ceiling in this new offense. I've been a little dismissive of him as a player. I kind of can't help it when I watch him play this last year and I see him running what seems to be like a 5.140 time, and I just see whatever little bit of athleticism he has now gone. But let's explore this a little bit here because I might be missing something with Dissly, and I want to address it before we get to the season. So let's talk about Uncle Will for a little bit and ponder the possibility that he may have a bigger role in this offense than expected, and that he may end up producing a lot more than he did in 2020. So first, let's take a look at the state of the offense in terms of pass catchers right now. I have said in the past that our wide receiver spot is pretty thin, and even after adding Dwayne Eskridge, Tamorrion Terry, and Cade Johnson, I think that's still the case, partially because Tamorrion Terry and Cade Johnson are unlikely to be big contributors in 2021, if they are contributors at all. But we have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett at the top, and then we have Dwayne Eskridge. And I like Eskridge. I think he's going to do well for us, but he is a rookie who has never done anything in the NFL. So for us to sit here and just assume that he's going to go out there and start killing it and be a great number 3 receiver is probably getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. And even if these top 3 do well, which I think they will, one injury to any of these players and suddenly you're down to Freddie Swain, and then you're down to the Tamorrion Terrys, Cade Johnsons, Penny Harts, Aaron Fullers, and the John Ursua and Cody Thompsons of the world. So, Freddie Swain seems like a good guy, seems like a good kid, seems like he can move his arms and legs in a way that generally resembles how NFL players do. I just don't see the upside. So, the receiver position is pretty thin in Seattle, and we can't really survive one injury. So, one thing I said before the draft was that what if Seattle decided to mitigate the weakness at receiver by getting another big time tight end and running a lot of 2 tight end sets? We never did go get that big tight end, but what if we can still do it anyway? Right now we have Gerald Everett, and I think we all expect Gerald Everett to have a pretty good season for us. I think he's going to do good stuff. We also have Shane Waldron, who was a tight end coach earlier in his career, and he was involved in the Rams offense for a few years there where they had 2 prolific tight ends in Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. So what if the solution is already on the roster? What if Will Dissly, the current backup tight end, ends up getting a lot of action in the offense and ends up becoming the pass catcher that it seemed like he was on track to be in the first 2 years of his career? So let's take a look at Will Dissly's career so far and make sure we're being fair here, because in 2018 he kind of burst onto the scene with 2 really good games to start his career, and then he quieted down mostly because early in the 4th game, he had a major injury and missed the rest of the season. 2019, kind of the same thing. He had an awesome first 5 games, was just killing it, doing a lot of great stuff for this offense, was on pace to do some, Pro Bowl caliber stuff, honestly. And then he got hurt and missed the rest of the season. And then in 2020, we saw him play the whole year, and we saw him play a decent number of snaps, but there wasn't the consistent week-to-week production that some people, myself included, were maybe envisioning. And some of it was because we signed Greg Olsen, but Greg Olsen didn't do that much either. Dissly ended up losing some snaps to Jacob Hollister, who is the definition of replacement level. And I kind of felt like, okay, the first 2 years, those first 10 games, or really it's 8 games because he got injured early both times, That was just kind of an aberration, and 2020 is the real Will Dissly. But what if it's not? What if 2020 was the aberration and 2018 and 2019 are actually what he can do? Now, he didn't really do that much in college, I would know. He caught a handful of passes his whole college career, I think. He was mostly a blocking tight end, and he projected to be mostly a blocking tight end in the NFL. But what if his athleticism is something that he doesn't really need at all? Now, even when Dissly was killing it in 2019, he was not a great athlete. He was not somebody who was going to jump over people and bring down 80-yard touchdowns. He was not going to break 80 tackles and run to the end zone. He wasn't that kind of guy. He was the Jason Witten. He was the guy who would run good routes, get open despite not having great speed, and he had very sure hands. He didn't drop very many passes. He made a lot of positive things happen, and he did it without athleticism. So what if he can continue to do that? And what if he proves that 2020 was the fluke because Wilson wasn't looking his way and because the Schottenheimer offense just wasn't utilizing tight ends well? His 2018 game log, I mean, look, this looks like an aberration to me, kind of, right? You got to remember, at the start of 2018, we didn't really have any receivers. We had Tyler Lockett, and that's it. David Moore was the number 2, I think. Jerron Brown was playing way too much. I think we had Brandon Marshall. Yeah, that worked out great, didn't it? So Wilson had to throw the ball to somebody and ended up throwing it to Dissly. And he did have that one play where in Denver he broke like 30 tackles and ran 60 yards, almost scored a touchdown. Yeah, that's something that might happen once in Will Dissly's entire life. You're not going to see him rumbling down the field and blowing through tackles and making guys miss. That's not him. That's something that he will probably never do again in his career. So that one big play fueled a lot of what we saw from him in 2018. His one catch for 4 yards against Dallas, and then, of course, the one catch for 5 yards before he got hurt in Arizona. So I'm not going to pretend like this is meaningful, but if you look at the 2019 game logs, I mean, 5 catches for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns, 6 for 62, 7 for 57, 4 for 81. The dude was stacking good games on top of each other, man. And he was catching almost all of his targets. He looked like he was really coming on. And I remember at this point, with this Cardinals game and this Rams game, 2 games we won and 2 games where Dissly played really well, I was like, I may have sold this guy short a little bit. He looks like Jason Witten. He looks like he can be that guy. He looks like he can be a number 1 tight end. Then he got hurt, and, well, you get what you get in 2020. He was a quintessential number 2 tight end. He caught 1 or 2 passes a game. He caught most of the balls that were targeted in his direction, to his credit. 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, just very pedestrian stuff. Still a high catch percentage, but it seemed like the dream of him becoming a number 1 tight end was dead. But it could just be recency bias. It could be just me looking at that and being like, well, because the most recent memory I have of Will Dissly was him not playing, playing like a backup tight end. That's how I view him. But maybe 2020 was just a perfect storm. Maybe 2020 was a combination of him recuperating from his injury and him trying to fit into the Schottenheimer offense where tight ends didn't get used that much, and bringing in Greg Olsen, and et cetera, et cetera. If you take a look at what he was doing these first 2 seasons, just to give you an idea of where he was headed at first, if you project his 2018 stats out to a full 16-game season, you have 37 catches, 800 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And among tight ends, that would do pretty well. 17th in catches, 5th in yards, 2nd in touchdowns. Now, obviously, it's too small of a sample size to mean anything, but to give you an idea of the kind of pace he was on, he was making noise. He was definitely making noise. Again, it was mostly because of one big play. But 2019, you cannot say that. 2019, he had 5 legitimate games, and 4 of them he really produced. So this is actually meaningful, and he was on pace for 74 catches, 883 yards, and 13 touchdowns. That would have been 6th in catches, 6th in yards among tight ends, and 1st in touchdowns. And by the way, it would have been 1st in touchdowns among the entire NFL. And I doubt he would have gotten there because Metcalf was getting better with each and every week. But that's another thing in Disley's, another feather in Disley's cap. He was producing when we had DK Metcalf, when we had Tyler Lockett, we had the guys going, and he still was putting up the numbers. So it wasn't like Wilson had no choice but to feed Disley the ball. So I don't know. I have in recent times kind of written off Disley as just a guy. He's going to be a good blocking tight end who can be a good backup. He'll probably stick around in Seattle because this is where he played college and he likes it here and he has familiarity. And I don't see any more than that. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think Disley could get back to what he was showing us in 2019? I mean, that 2019 run, that 1 month of football where he was really looking like one of the best tight ends in the league, it happened. I don't know if he lost whatever little edge he had in terms of his ability to get open, but I'm definitely going to be willing to give him a chance. So let me know what you think in the comments. Will Disley, could he be a dominant tight end in the NFL like he was for that stretch? And if we have a wide receiver injury, could this team go to 2 tight end sets and get along just fine? Because I hate to say it, but there's certainly a chance that somebody in this receiver core gets hurt. All right, see you guys later today. Peace out, go Hawks. Let me know.